All right, welcome in college football playoff time. It is finally here. We get our very first taste of what a 12-team playoff is going to be like this year as Indiana and Notre Dame getting ready to kick off a little bit later here tonight. We got a couple of bowl games.
Obviously, this year's Hoosiers team has been very, very different. Let me start with the weather. As you were talking about weather, Joe, the reports that I read, and I read a bunch of reports this morning on the weather because I'm interested in this game. I'm in play on a team total for my clients for this game tonight. And having accurate weather info for games like this is key, especially when we talk about team totals. And the info I got, and I confirmed and double confirmed, it is supposed to snow during the day. There's supposed to be some light snow/snow flurries tonight. It's supposed to be cold. It is not supposed to be windy. Overall, my assessment of that weather forecast and how much it's going to affect the game is pretty close to zero. All right. Yes, there may be a little bit of snow on the field. Yes, it may be a little bit cold, but it's not like these teams aren't used to playing in cold or they're used to, it's not like they can't play with snow on the field. And I don't even think it's going to be particularly snowy during the game. So when you're talking about weather that matters, this is weather that's going to create headlines, might make some fun TV to watch. But in terms of betting side or total, I'm not convinced it makes a whole lot of difference. And frankly, I'm more interested. We're seeing 6.5 now for Notre Dame, which is it's a buy price for me. I mean, it's not like you guys haven't heard this before. But when we look at the Indiana Hoosiers and their season, the only reason they're here is not because Indiana is one of the best 12 teams in college football. They're not. Okay. No respected power rating number from any handicapper that you would look at is going to put Indiana in their top 12. They're not. They're here because they faced a remarkably weak schedule, both non-conference and in Big 12 and in Big 10 games. The two Big 10 games they faced, they played against a defense that's comparable to what we're seeing tonight, perhaps. Michigan and Ohio State. In those two games, the Hoosiers offense flat out didn't work. I'm not convinced a little bit of extra prep time is going to change that for the Indiana Hoosiers tonight.
Bryan, let me ask you, because the 6.5 is kind of laughable here, but we did talk to John Murray over at the Westgate Superbook, and he is making it known under no certain terms. The book needs Notre Dame, which I find hilarious that the book needs Notre Dame of all teams in order for them to be profitable in this game. Did you see Indiana being the public dog as they are right now? Because I didn't see that coming.
No, I did not. In fact, when it was going to be announced that they were going to be playing, I was looking to be fading them. And that was the situation I was looking for. And I'm with you. I'm surprised the money's come in on them. They are popular because of the record. And the record, as Teddy pointed out, the reason they have that record is because they didn't play anybody. And there's been a lot of, it's interesting with the NIL and everything's going on this year with all everybody in and out of the transfer portal. It's evened out football. The SEC isn't as good as it normally was. I don't think the Big Ten is as good as it normally was. And the ACC is obviously not as good as it was. So if you could take points in a lot of these games, I can understand it. The problem is, as Teddy pointed out, Indiana, when they did play quality defenses, they scored 20 and 15 points, I believe. The over-under for Indiana in team total right now is about 21.5. I don't think they're going to get there. I think this Notre Dame team, not only do they have a really good defense, but they take time off the clock. And the more time you take off the clock, the less time Indiana can score. So to me, the best bet on this game right here is team total under for Indiana, the 21.5.
Under for Indiana, 21.5. And Ross, let me ask you about this total, because I keep seeing over money coming in. Like, it's all like what? So I saw this thing as high as 52 earlier today. Maybe we'll start to get some buyback on the under, but If 52 is going to be the number and people are convinced it's the over, can you see 52 points coming in here? Because I feel like this game's got blowout written all over it, but how would you approach the total? Team total? Unders, fade Indiana kind of thing? Maybe look at the over on Notre Dame? What do you do with the totals in this?
So I got a side on this game tonight that I got up for sale right now. So I'm going to have to reserve comment on the side. The total is actually came down to 50.5 in the last hour. So that gives you an indication of where I believe that's sharp money. Again, like Teddy likes to say, you got two teams that are run heavy. What happens when two teams are run heavy? Well, the clock continues to run. Two teams that play pretty good defense. And Bryan and Teddy both mentioned that Indiana's had their struggles when facing against quality defenses like they faced the two teams in the Big Ten in Michigan and Ohio State. Notre Dame isn't exactly an explosive team. I believe if they have the lead, they'll lead on the running game and chew up clock. So, I would lean toward the under here. And it's too bad that the number went down to 50.5, but I still think there's value on the under at 50.5 here. So that's the direction I would go. And if you remember last week, guys, I had mentioned that at that time that Indiana was the public side, which is very unusual, as you guys just alluded to, because public usually bets on Notre Dame like they did on the Dallas Cowboys when they were popular. So again, that should tell you something right in itself.
Ross, I agree with you at 100% here. That game, 8 o'clock here tonight. We'll see if there's any more movement. I got to believe Notre Dame money sitting on the sidelines, probably waiting to get involved here sooner rather than later. But 6.5s are available right now this afternoon before the kick. Also, 20-7 right now in this Ohio-Jacksonville State game for those of you joining us live about 2 minutes ago before the half. And if I'm not mistaken, Teddy, this was 6. Did it get it steamed all? Ohio was a 6-point favorite before it all started, steamed up?
6.5 even. Actually, most books were at 6.5 by kickoff. So, So, and the books, they're getting smacked around on some of these games. You know, the UNLV Cal game, the books got hammered on that game. If Ohio holds on here, I mean, this opened as low as 1.5, closed 6.5. You know, the wise guys were on the Bobcats. It was like there was a whole lot of public money on the dog. So far this bowl season, the sharp money's been moving these numbers, and the sharp money's been right more than they've been wrong.
All right. Well, I'm going to dive in on a line that I have not been able to put my finger on the pulse. It is coming up this afternoon. And Ross, I'm going to throw it back to you. This Gasparilla Bowl is it's giving me gas, for Christ's sakes, with what's going on with this line. I mean, we saw it at a, opening number when we thought everyone would be playing. We weren't sure whether, Mensa was going to sit out or not. It was as high as 14 and a half in Florida. And I would say the last 48 hours or so, it's been all Tulane. And now 10 and a half, somewhere in that ballpark here. I don't know. I mean, how did you see this game going into it? And what do you make of all this movement?
I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. So I'm curious to hear you guys' take on this. But when I did a free pick video on this game a few days ago, I laid 14 with Florida. Then I looked today and see 10 and a half and 10 and said, holy cow, what did I miss? But Mensa is out. He's transferring. He's going to transfer to Duke. The backup quarterback is Ty Thompson. Their second string quarterback, he's out. He's on the transfer portal. And Ty Thompson, who's a running quarterback who threw 11 passes this year, is going to start at quarterback today for Tulane. And this guy, again, he's ran for 243 yards. Coming out of high school, he was a 5-star recruit at Oregon. He stayed at Oregon for 3 years, got limited playing time, transferred to Tulane, didn't get much time with Tulane either. So it's a whole different element in the way you defend Tulane now with Mensa under quarterback compared to Ty Thompson. I just don't get it. And I'm curious to hear you guys' thoughts because You look at Florida, just the strength of schedule alone, how they finished the year. They won their last 3, including wins over LSU and Mississippi.
Yep.
You know, and this Tulane team, they start 9-2. They lose their last 2 games and I think the only 2 games they faced a nationally ranked opponent this year. And they lose to Memphis and get blown out by Army in the conference championship game.
Yep.
So I don't know. What am I missing, guys? I just think Florida's the play here. So maybe there's something I don't know.
I'm with you. I thought Florida was the play from the beginning, but apparently the market is seeing otherwise. I get that Napier, I don't think he's covered a bowl game yet, but what the hell's that got to do with anything, Brian? What do you make of such crazy line movement? And we all knew who was sitting out and who wasn't here over the last couple of days, but it appears it's been all Tulane money. What are we missing?
I think the Tulane defense is pretty good. And I'm not overly impressed by Florida. Sure, it's Florida. They are playing in their home state. It's not their home field. But Florida's gotten hot as of late. And are you going to throw away what everything has been done all year long and just look at – so Tulane's lost their last 2 games. The quarterback's not there. This game means more to Tulane, doesn't it? To have a chance to redeem your season after the way you've lost the last 2 games, playing an SEC school. I like the Tulane defense. I have not been impressed with Florida all year long. I talked about how the bigger conferences – they're not as good anymore because a lot of these players are going to other schools because they're getting the NIL money. So to me, I took the Tulane. I play the Tulane at a better number than what's out there right now, but that's the way I'm looking at this. When you're playing at Tulane, you're not recruiting great quarterbacks in the first place. So I'm not as concerned about the offense as I am enjoying the Tulane defense. And to get a team with a defense as good as Tulane, Florida obviously has a very good defense. Tulane's not going to put up many points. The under or Tulane, to me, are the 2 sides that I would two bets I would look at in this game.
Teddy, I did see top running back, top wide receiver on Tulane will be available to Ty Thompson, essentially the 3rd string quarterback. And Brian's right. They were a run-first team to begin with. So maybe shorten the game here a little bit. Listen, it's one thing if you don't want to back Florida over a 2-touchdown favorite. But are we getting to a number, Teddy, where we're going, if this thing drops below 10, do we have enough confidence in Florida to get it done?
So I'm not playing the game. I'm not close to playing the game. If it goes to 9.5, I'm not playing the game. If it goes back up to 14, I'm not playing the game. So let me start with that. Where I want to attack this game and focus on, because I think this is very illustrative of bowl season. All right. Florida coming into the game, and they've been a great point spread team. They started out 0-3 ATS, and they covered every game but 1. Down the stretch, 8-1 ATS their last 9. Making everybody money, building a betting bandwagon. Tulane's on the other side of the spectrum. All right. Good point spread season, disaster point spread finish for the Green Wave. Anyone that bet Tulane in either of their last 2 games wasn't pleased with the results, and therefore there's no betting bandwagon. The betting bandwagon, the public betting bandwagon is on the favorite. There's no betting bandwagon for the underdog. Now, the other thing we've seen from Tulane this year, we've seen them show the ability to hang around with some pretty good teams. You know, they hung around with K-State for the entire game against K-State. They hung around with Oklahoma plus the points. Don't be fooled by that final score. They were in that game. So we've seen them step up in class and compete. It's not like this team can't possibly compete with an SEC team. They went on the road to Oklahoma and hung around in that ballgame, you know. So given the nature of the way this point spread has moved, where it's clear sharp money for the dog, given the fact that the team with the big betting bandwagon, in general, I'd much rather have a team that's dismal ATS in a bowl than a team that's been great all year ATS in a bowl. The Tulane isn't that, but the teams that are awful, the teams that are 33% ATS in bowls for the season, tend to be great bets come bowl time because there's no one to want. Everyone's been burned with them. Oh, I don't want that team. This isn't that. I'm not playing the game, but I can certainly understand why Tulane is taking the money.
Tulane is, and I'm seeing maybe even a 10 starting to show up there. So should be interesting. Welcome to bowl season. I mean, hell, these college football playoff games, we're starting to see Notre Dame money come in. Notre Dame, rather, under a touchdown now, 6.5. We've seen Florida go the other way. It makes you wonder, what are we going to get before kickoff tomorrow in a couple of these games? We're going to talk SMU, Penn State. We're going to talk, of course, Clemson and Texas, and we'll finish with the one and only, the Ohio State University taking on Tennessee here. But let me start with you, Ross, when it comes to this Clemson game tomorrow. And a big shout out to those of you guys joining us, by the way, live today in the chat room. Always a pleasure to see Big Daddy, Titan CT in the house as well, FB Coach 13. It's always good to see you guys. We certainly appreciate the support. Don't forget to hit that like button. We'd most appreciate it there. But Ross, kick me off here with this Clemson game and Texas. And we have talked about it a lot, about how it just seems like everybody seems to be assuming Texas has already won this game. Let's just pencil them in because they have better players, which they got a ton of talent. Well, that cracks me up, because they had a ton of talent against Washington last year in the player, and that didn't work out all that well for them. They've had a ton of talent against Georgia twice, couldn't beat them either. And even they even had a backup quarterback that they could have taken advantage of, and they didn't. So it just seems like this is an obnoxious number. Is the defense the reason that everyone is so convinced about Texas? And are you looking at the total in this one, and how do we approach it?
Yeah, I mean, you look at, I mentioned this on last week's show. Texas is a championship type defense. There's no two ways about it. Their numbers speak volumes in that regard. They played in the SEC. They still put up great defensive numbers. Offensively, especially in the last half of the season, and especially with Quinn Ewers at quarterback, leaves a lot to be desired for me. On the other side of the coin, I think why people are automatically mailing in Texas is, you look at Clemson, they're lucky to be here, right? I mean, let's face it, Joe. They caught some breaks. This is their only 3-loss team in the field, probably from the weakest power conference in the country. And they lose their final game to South Carolina. They get blown out in their early game against Georgia. They lose at home to Louisville, and here they are. They squeak by 34-31 against SMU in the ACC title game on a 56-yard walk-off field goal. And, and here they are. They're in the spot, and they blew a 31-14 second-half lead in that game. So I could see why people are leaning toward Texas. But in terms of the under, again, Texas's defense is very good. Clemson has gone under the total in all 4 of their true road games this year. Dabo Swinney, since he's been with Clemson, coming off a conference win by 3 or less, he's gone under the total on all 5 of those occasions in the following game. In Texas this year has faced 5 teams like Clemson that averaged 31 points or more, and all 5 of those games have gone under. So I think Texas, Clemson's going to have a hell of a time moving the ball with any type of consistency in this game. And I'm just not sold on the Texas offense, like I said, especially in the second half of the season. So my lean right now would be going under the total of 51.5 in this contest.
Yeah, certainly feels like a good look. 12.5, by the way, as that money continues to get bet up there. Bryan, did you have a feeling with this one way or the other? But this is, I mean, this just feels way out of line, 12.5 and continuing to get pushed up here. Or is Texas just that good? Are we missing something here?
Well, I've been a Texas fan over others, but I think the line is a little high. I've seen some 13s here in Vegas. South Point's got a 13, and I think Westgate's got a 13. So the money's coming in on Texas. So is that public money, it probably is. Texas has been more of the public side this year as compared to Clemson. I don't really care for this Clemson offense, to be totally with you. The passing game's okay. They got a 34-6 touchdown to interception ratio, which is great. But they've been very lucky. On the season, they've fumbled 15 times, only lost 3 of them. This is a team that has had a lot of good luck all season long, playing in a conference that just wasn't that great this year. Obviously, Florida State was expected to do a lot more during the season, but they haven't done it. And Clemson only beat them 29-13. When you come back and look at it, you go, well, that was a little disappointing, I guess. The teams that they have played that have been ranked was Georgia. They lose by 31, scoring 3 points. South Carolina, they lose by 3, scoring 14. And then the Southern Methodist game, which they've got a good defense, but they also have a really high-powered offense. I just haven't seen enough out of Clemson. That was a coin flip against Southern Methodist, and they probably should have lost. South Carolina, I thought they got outplayed the entire game and were lucky to stay that close. And then Georgia, that blowout in game 1. Clemson just hasn't played very good teams, and I don't like the offense. So I'm using it's at 20.5 right now for Clemson on the team total. I really think Texas has got a great defense. I really can't see the way Clemson has played when they stepped up in class this year to put up 21 points against this Texas team. And Texas, because of the quarterback, has not played well. I think they can have a lot of success in the running game. Texas should be able to run the ball very well. Clemson on the season, despite the lack of talent that they have played, have allowed 4.56 yards per carry. Texas can just keep that ball on the ground. I think they can have a lot of success, which shortens the game, which means Clemson does not get over that 20.5 or so, and we play that under.
Teddy, from a total perspective in this game, it was 51.5. Now we're starting to see 50.5. That Texas defense is legit national championship worthy. At least all the numbers show it. That's a very, very good defense here. Maybe not a bad way to look. I mean, if you think Texas wins, fading Clemson's team total, not a bad way to go. Maybe even look in the first half of this game and say, give me the team total under with Clemson as well. Or maybe just take the damn team total over for Texas because you think they're going to bulldoze them.
So, yes. I wouldn't argue. I wouldn't argue with any of that stuff. And of course, this is a big, this is not a small opinion for me. This is a 5% big ticket play for me tomorrow. 100% perfect with the 5% big tickets in college football since last November, 2023. So they've been good. And this is one that I have a particularly strong opinion upon. I will say this. Texas has been an under machine. What did they catch? They catched one over since September. Okay.
Yep.
And that came in a game against the Gators where they scored 49. One like Florida marched the ball up and down the field against them. So it's a team that has trended to the under all year. Now, worth noting, we talk about the layoff between the end of the season and the bowl games. And a lot of times these rhythm offenses will be affected when you're taking 3 weeks off, a month off in between games. This isn't that. Okay, these two teams played 2 weeks ago. So it's like in their conference championship games, both of them. So it's essentially like a normal bye week and then a game this week. It's not a huge, long layoff, and now the offenses might be real hiccupy early on, or real, So it's not a game where situationally the under stands out as much as, sometimes you find like an up-tempo offense that's all rhythm-based and they haven't played in 5 weeks, and those are easy teams you want to bet against. This isn't that, certainly when it comes to totals.
26.5 is your first half total if you think it takes a little while for both offenses to get going. So a lot of different ways to approach that Clemson-Texas game, but it is by far the biggest spread on the card for these first 4 games. And don't forget, Make sure you guys hit that like button. Don't forget, hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Shout out to those guys in TikTok and on IG, Instagram for hanging out with us here today. We're going to talk some Penn State. And I hope Z Connolly 22, that answered your question in a roundabout way of what everyone thinks of the Texas and Clemson game. But the Penn State SMU game is interesting. And Bryan, I'll go back to you on this one. It feels like I thought this number would have been risen by now. I really did think maybe we were gonna see more Penn State money continue to flow in. It's 8.5. It looks like it's been 8.5. I think the total is very intriguing in this game too. 12 o'clock as opposed to 8 o'clock at Happy Valley. Afternoon game versus night game. How big an advantage do you, when you put the numbers together, is Penn State at home in this spot?
Yeah, you mentioned that's one of my concerns in this one. It's great to see SMU getting the chance to participate in this playoff. We're so used to the normal team, same normal teams always in there. Not only is it been expanded to 12 this year, we get to see teams that we don't normally get to see. And there's still a lot of people, even though it's the end of the season, that haven't seen SMU play. But it's great to see them get a chance to play here. They posted an 11-2 record, but both their losses came against ranked opposition, BYU and Clemson. They lost both those games by a field goal. That said, as I mentioned before, the ACC for the most part, to me, has been down this whole year. Florida State to blame and others. But that said, the Mustangs averaged 38.5 points per game, and only BYU held them to less than 28 points. SMU has had solid line play, which is really important when you're stepping up in class and playing a physical team. They average 1.71 yards per play more than they allow overall passing and running. Penn State allowed just 16.4 points per game, and they're off by far their worst defensive performance. 45-37 loss to Oregon. Nittany Lions have 2 losses on the year, both against top 10 opposition, Ohio State and Oregon. 2 teams that really would not surprise me if they go deep in this tournament. The game's being played at noon, as you mentioned. I think that really does hurt Penn State. They've got, they're having a whiteout in the early action. I've never liked to play too many games to start early. I've charted my records over the years. Maybe I just bet Boston College too often, and they always seem to be one of the first teams on the schedule. But it's one of those where you lose the first game, and then you got to build it back the rest of the day. That is always a concern here. But we know what the struggles this team has had over the year against quality opposition. But this is a weaker situation here with SMU than what they normally play when they step up in class. Weather should be in Nittany Lion advantage, I believe. SMU isn't on the same level as Ohio State and Oregon. And they're not used to playing this type of weather situation we'll probably see this weekend. I like the Mustangs team, but this is just too much to handle for a club that hasn't been in this situation before. As long as we're laying single digits, I'll be on the Penn State side.
He's on the Penn State side. Ross, the only reason I didn't jump in on the Penn State and lay the number here is because even if the game gets out of hand for Penn State early, what SMU showed us last week and that offense and the ability to come back, it feels like the back door is going to be wide open in the second half because Penn State just needs to win and advance here. There's no style points anymore. And it just feels like, do I really want to lay 8.5 with Penn State? Do you have any faith that SMU can keep it within the 8.5?
No, I don't. I really don't. I got the winning total in this game up for sale right now, but I'll comment on the side. It's more of a lean, so I shouldn't say I absolutely don't think so. But if in the law of probabilities, in my mind, I think it's going to be a tough ask for SMU. I don't care if they play this game at 1 a.m, it doesn't matter. The bottom line is, Bryan brings up some good points. SMU playing in the ACC, who have they really played this year? I mean, the one time they stepped up in class in the regular season was against BYU. They lost at home. And then the final regular season game, they lose to Clemson 34-31. And to answer your question, Joe, It's a whole different scenario coming back in a neutral site in Charlotte against a Clemson defense compared to trying to come back with all the noise when you're on offense of 100,000 cheering fans in Happy Valley. It's a little different task, and it's a whole different animal. Yes, Penn State did come off the worst defensive performance of the year, but overall, this team has been solid defensively. And Teddy brought it up last week. I believe Bryan did too. James Franklin doesn't do well against top 5 teams, right? 1-13 now, I think he is. Well, last I checked, SMU's not a top 5 caliber team. They're a good. I wouldn't go out on a limb and say they're great. So I am going to go. I would lean here toward laying the points at home with Penn State. I just think it's the magnitude of the game and the crowd that they're going to have to face. Let's not forget, guys. This was an SMU team that was a group of 5 team up until this year. So I just think the atmosphere and the magnitude of the game is going to be too big for SMU in this situation.
Teddy, how when you figure out your numbers here and your power rankings, and because we've never had this where Penn State is at home playing a playoff game in the middle of December here, but is of all the home games this week of the 4, is that to you, or do you look at that and say Penn State may have the biggest home field advantage, or does it go to Ohio State, or how do you rate that when you put it together?
I don't. I mean, it's Ohio State has the potential to have the strongest home field edge here if they get off to a good start. If Ohio State gets off to a crappy start, they're going to turn on the team. Yep. They'll be booing them off the field, and that's a negative. So Ohio State's home field could be worth nothing in this game. Could be a negative in this game, and it could be worth 4 or 5 points. It's a questionable home field for the Buckeyes. Penn State, all right, the final exams are over. All the students have gone home. I just looked right now. You can get tickets for $30.
Woo!
All right. Compared to the other playoff games,
yeah.
You can get in for $30 right now in Happy Valley. All right. I don't think this home field is that going to be that crazy. And look, SMU last week, all right, or 2 weeks ago, all right, they played Clemson, and they're the first quarter of that game, the first 20 minutes, deer in the headlights. Hey, well, this stage is too big for us. The rest of the game, hostile environment. I know it's a neutral site. That was all Clemson fans.
Yep.
The rest of the game, SMU was a better team. All right. I do not trust Penn State to lay points. I do not trust Penn State to lay points against good offenses. Look what happened this year when Penn State faced a team that can move the football. We all saw what happened in the Oregon game. It wasn't only that. USC moved the football up and down the field against them throughout. And that's not the only game like that. Minnesota had success. This is not, of all the units in this game, I think the Penn State defense is the most overrated unit. I lean SMU. I lean over. I haven't pulled the trigger on either yet, but I might.
Absalom Long there, Young rather, on YouTube Shorts. He's got 2 bets. He says SMU money line, SMU on the alternate line here. Maybe even laying a couple of points. That is bold, my friend. That is what I am talking about. SMU and Penn State game tomorrow, guys. That'll be your opening playoff game on the slate tomorrow, 12 o'clock Eastern. And what a hell of a day tomorrow is, guys, because you got 12 o'clock Eastern. I think you got a 1 o'clock NFL game. Then we've got the next college football playoff game starting at 4, I think, with Texas and Clemson. Then you got the Steelers on. As you can tell, now would be a good time to visit these 3 gentlemen over at WagerTalk.com, because I promise you all 3 of these guys are going to be locked and loaded for what is going to be a huge football weekend here. And right now, no better time. Take advantage of the 30 days, guys. You get a 30-day all-access pass, basically buying all of January, and you're going to get every one of their plays for the rest of December, which will include a loaded card in football, both the NFL and college football coming your way this weekend. So take advantage of it, guys. Great, and I mean great opportunity to partner up with Teddy partner up with Bryan Leonard, partner up with Ross Benjamin. Take advantage of that deal now, guys. Because there is plenty of games between now and the end of the year that you are going to want to be a part of. All right, Teddy brought up Tennessee taking on Ohio State. And this is another one. This is the favorite there, Bryan Leonard, that I thought the public would be all over. I mean, the dog here was Tennessee. I thought Tennessee would garner the most public interest. It appears that Indiana's doing a pretty good job of that right now. But I thought a lot of folks might want to jump on the Tennessee bandwagon here. But my goodness, an SEC team in 18 degrees and windy. And I mean, that's your neck of the woods there. I heard it's balmy. It's a beautiful time to play football there in Columbus, isn't it?
I'm glad I'm not there. I'll tell you that thing. I'm cold enough out here in Vegas, and we hit 70 yesterday. To me, and you're right, the line hasn't moved crazily here, but I spend a lot of time on Twitter, and there's a lot of guys I follow. Everybody seems to think if there's one upset in this first round with the teams going on tomorrow, that it's Tennessee. My problem is Tennessee is a great bully when they step up in class. That's not the same team. You look at their schedule this year, they scored 69 against Chattanooga, 71 against Penn State, 56 against UTEP, and pretty much the other games have been anywhere from 14 to 36 points. So it's a situation for Tennessee. They're not only going on the road in cold temperatures, but they're going to face an Ohio State defense that at times has been terrific. The problem with Ohio State is I think they're also a team that is a good bully. Maybe not as much this year as in years past, but they showed that they were a bully against Indiana, and a lot of that had to do with the quotes coming out of the Indiana coach and the whole thing. So they ran up the score on them. And Indiana, despite what I said earlier, they're a pretty good team. They're not one of the best teams in college football, and I think Tennessee's in a very similar situation. Ohio State at home has traditionally been very strong, and they are very good against weaker opposition. I'm not so sure Tennessee's that much weaker. The line tells you it's not that much weaker. But all the pressure here is on the Buckeyes. You would normally find, I always like to find teams that are better teams that are off of a loss. In hockey tonight, for example, you got Dallas. Dallas is 8-3 this season off of a loss, and they're playing at home against a team they should beat up. You got kind of like Dallas. In football like that, it's another thing I look for because they just lost to Michigan. Well, maybe not just lost, but it's recent. And now all that is talking about so who's going to be the new Ohio State coach? If they lose this game in the first round of this playoffs, there will be a new Ohio State coach. That's the problem. And when you have a team playing with that kind of pressure, it worries me a little bit. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. I would prefer betting the under here over a side. I think the line's about where it should be. But I don't think either team will be able to move the ball as well. Tennessee's only given up less than 14 points a game in the SEC, and even though the SEC was down, that's still pretty impressive.
Teddy, I can't even believe I'm saying this, though, but do you think, this thing drops to 6.5 at any point before it gets beat back up? And is there even such a thing? Is this a buy low on a Ohio State team that just shit the bed down the road against Michigan that has been salivating? It feels like I thought this number would be bigger, and yet here we are, juiced to the, -7, juiced at -120. Like, what? Is it buy low on Ohio State?
So I'm not even, of all the 4 playoff games, this is the one that there's no way I bet. Okay. I don't want side. I don't want total. There are too many X factors in this game for me to get involved. Ohio State could win this game by 5 touchdowns. They could lose this game by 5 touchdowns. I would not be shocked either way. Because if things go south for them, they're going to go south, dude. The crowd's going to go, I would not be shocked to see Ohio State lose this game by margin. I would not be shocked to see them win it by margin. It's a hard pass for me. There's no, again, from an intangible standpoint, there's a lot of concerns. Tennessee, in terms of their ability to step up in class, they were dogs twice this season. They beat Alabama by a touchdown, and they lost to Georgia by 2 touchdowns. That's it. But they were in both games. But again, I don't want to waste anyone's time. I'm not playing it. I'm not close to playing it. Good luck if you want to get involved. And I will say this, from an in-game standpoint, the team that falls behind, I think, is going to have a hard time coming back in this game. It might be a situation where even if you take the worst of it in-game, that might be the better bet than trying to bet something before kickoff.
Ross, I have seen enough Ohio State games on Saturday afternoons to know that it doesn't often start great for them. And it's usually much lower scoring games early than late. With the conditions and what's going on there, it wouldn't first half under. And I think Tom in the chat room also is looking at that as well. I wouldn't mind splitting this game in half, because I do believe what happens in the first half might dictate what happens in the second half in this game. But are you leaning to a side, to a total, or, who do you trust? Because Teddy's right. They will absolutely destroy Ryan Day in game if they're down 10-0 here by the time they head to the second quarter.
So 2 things. I agree with Bryan unequivocally on the under. I agree with Teddy. This is the least of the 4 games I'm looking forward to. There's no intrigue for me here. I don't know why. It's just the style of both teams. Having said that, I mean, if it was 90 degrees and sunny with no winds whatsoever, or they were playing in a dome, I'd still like this game under. I mean, you look at the fact Ohio State's given up 17 points or fewer in 11 of 12 games this year. The only team that's exceeded that number is Oregon. Last I checked, Oregon is not, Tennessee is not the same caliber offense that Oregon is. On the other hand, Tennessee's credit, they're an excellent defensive team too. And I mentioned SMU, and the game might be too big for them before 100,000 fans. That's not going to be the case with Tennessee because they regularly draw over 100,000 people at Neyland Stadium. So I would lean toward the under here, but I don't even know if I'm going to watch this game, to be quite honest with you, because that's how much I'm not looking forward to it.
Ooh, well, I'm looking forward. I would love, and I know Teddy will never admit this, but I'll say it for him. Nothing would get more pleasure than to watch Ohio State with a mutiny by losing this game, with him and Chip Kelly deciding to run the ball like they did against Michigan instead of throwing. Teddy, there will be a certain amount of pleasure watching Ohio State if they lose this game, will it not?
No, because I don't want Ryan Day to be fired as a Michigan man. Same thing with you guys don't remember. Like John Cooper, all right, was back in the day when I'm in Ann Arbor. John Cooper was, and every year they go 11-0 into the Michigan game and then lose the Michigan game. You're like, no, keep John Cooper, please, keep him another year. Be a top 5 team. I like Ryan Day to stay there. So if Ohio State loses this game, Ryan Day leaves, and then Michigan's in trouble. Potentially. Depending on the hire. Like when Urban Meyer got hired, you're like, uh-oh.
Oh, yeah.
As a Michigan fan. So it's I would not – I've never said when Ohio State loses. Don't get me wrong. But if I do unless I have money on Ohio State. But if I had to play it, if I do have a rooting interest, I want as a Michigan alum, I'd rather have Ryan Day as the guy we can beat every year.
I love it too. And the other crazy thing is, Bryan, we're at a point right now in college football where Tennessee shit out a lot of NIL money for this kid, this freshman Nico, to win games like this. And if he don't, so you add that next layer, you think, it doesn't matter to an 18-year-old kid. He's making them up. Man, there is a whole level of different pressure with the kind of money that these kids are getting now, Bryan. It's a different game, is it not?
It is, and there's even quotes coming out of a lot of coaches lately talking about that. And they said you used to be able to just get the best guys that you could get. Now you got to really worry. It's like Major League Sports with the salary cap.
Yep.
You know, if Juan Soto does not come out and play like he's had in the past, that could devastate the Mets for years. You have to be able to. And keep in mind, these college kids are a lot younger than the guys that are playing pro sports. So I wouldn't want to have that job, to be honest with you. You sign a guy for all that money and he doesn't pan out, you could lose your job.
Yeah, and you pay him all that money because you want to win a playoff game and on your way to a national championship. And if he doesn't, oh my goodness! By the way, quote of the day: shout out. There's always one winner in the chat room. I think G. Hurt gets it, Dan. G. Hurt says, Ryan Day looks like a combative manager at Olive Garden if you send in a complaint on the breadsticks. Outstanding stuff, G. Hurt. Very nice. Very, very good. He's got that look. Why are you putting Ross on the screen? And we didn't say Ross. What's wrong with you there, Dan? What are you throwing Ross under the bus for? That's all right, not a problem. G. Hurt's fantastic.
No Joe comment ISO shot. That's
I love it.
You get Ross. He's a bonus toss in there.
But I'm not that Ross is at the Olive Garden. That's not what we're getting at here. All right, one final one we're seeing in the chat. And we brought it up on yesterday's show too. And let me just ask each of you guys quick on the way out of here. Teddy, it certainly feels like a very chalky weekend. And it just feels like we're going to be looking at a lot of chalk here. And if we all seem to think that the favorites are going to win here, what about just a round robin money line parlay with the 4 favorites? Take the spreads out of it and let it go. Unless any of us think there is going to be a crazy upset here in the first 4 games of this playoff. Are any of these home teams losing?
Yes, at least one home team will lose. If you play a 4-team money line parlay, you will lose that parlay.
Boom.
In my opinion.
But, well, that was hopefully what I was getting at there. I don't know which one it's going to be. Bryan, what about you think? Is it a chalky weekend or are we getting one outright upset here?
Yeah, that's always a concern because it's going to be very popular. In fact, I was listening to Kelly's show with the manager of the Westgate, and he says it could be a disaster if they go into that last game having the other teams all the favorites winning.
Yep.
And then all the money's coming in on Ohio State, and they got to beg for Tennessee money.
Yep.
Yeah, he said that. He goes, I'm already having nightmares about having to do that. So, yeah, I think at least one of these road teams wins. And if you're taking a look at the power ratings, obviously. A lot of these lines are pretty high. I mean, you talked about Texas. Texas, who would have thought there's going to be 12.5, 13? There's plenty of reasons why Penn State is a little bit pricey here. It's because of the time the game's being played.
Yep.
And SMU's been a quality opponent. So, yeah, I could see any of it. And look at all the public money coming in on Indiana. So, I could see at least one of these teams lose.
Ross, you in that camp? You believe we're getting at least one outright dog winner this weekend?
Yeah, I mean, these are too many quality teams in the same weekend for at least one upset not to occur. I mean, I would think I'm not going to go out on a limb and say that's 100% sure, but I think the likelihood of all 4 home teams winning and especially all 4 home teams covering are very small. So I definitely could see at least one upset happening out of the 4 games.
Teddy, I am seeing, I don't know if you have the live odds page open, but I am now seeing or being told 9.5s are on the board for Florida coming up here. Are you seeing that as well?
So, Joe, I pretty much have the WagerTalk free live odds screen open and running on my computer pretty much 24/7. All right. It's always up. When I'm looking over here, that's me looking at the live odds screen. I don't put it on this screen because I got too much other stuff going on this screen. But the live odds are always going. I am seeing 9.5s right now for Florida at multiple books. It is what I would call a split number. There are 10s, there are 9.5s. Obviously, if you want the favorite, lay 9.5. If you want the dog, take 10. And if you don't have both options available to you right now,
right,
it means you don't have enough betting accounts open. It's just that plain and simple, because both lines are available. If you have one account open, 2. You have 2 accounts open, 3. You have 3 accounts open, 4. Every legalized sports book in your state, you should be having an account that's open and that's funded in order to take advantage of these numbers. So that's rather than put it all into one, split it up and get these half points for free instead of worrying about buying them.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is what you call teeing it up and getting a great spot there for the WagerTalk Live odds page. Thank you very much. Steady, outstanding, as always there. All right, Ross, before we get out of here, tell the fine folks, all the good-looking folks, not the Ryan Day lookalikes who apparently were saying disbanded brother. It says if Ryan Day was bald, he'd look like Homer Simpson, who works at a Olive Garden. So tell them on the way out here, Ross, what you got locked, loaded, ready to roll for this weekend.
Well, I'm glad you asked, Joe. I have the winning side tonight in the Notre Dame, Indiana game. I got 2 college football playoff picks up for Saturday. Folks, I hear a lot of people talk about sharp money, especially college football sharp money right now with all the big games going on. 123-80, or excuse me, 136-93. 59.4%, up $10,000 since November 26th of 2022. Since the 2022 postseason, 28-15. That's good for 65%. 9-1 the last 3 days in all sports. 15-5 in all sports and Sunday. Sharp money is right here, folks, especially in college football. WT.buzz/RB, $149 for the college football package, bowl package from me, and also the other specials that Joe just mentioned. $299. Not only you get 30 days, we're going to give you the rest of December and all of January. Take advantage of those offers from myself, Ross Benjamin.
Love it. Illtown, by the way, it looks like 10.5. If you're seeing 10.5, 9.5 is what Teddy was telling you. 9.5s are available there. That's why it pays to have more than one book. Kookie Smith, who you all got on Notre Dame and Indiana? Just hit the rewind button. You'll get it good to go. Yes, Teddy. Yes, Teddy. Yes, I see the
There
pen.
are 10.5s out there. There are 10.5s, 10s, and 9.5s out there. So they exist as we speak. That's that line variance is beautiful for bettors.
Yes.
That's it.
Great opportunity for a middle. Bryan Leonard, talk to us here, man. What do you have, especially once that game starts and Tulane opens up with a touchdown? Bryan Leonard, what are you thinking here, my man? Locked, loaded, ready to go. You mentioned NHL. What else you got going on here?
Well, Ross mentioned a lot of long-term stats, excellent long-term stats. I've got a bunch of those as well. People looking for a current, swept the board yesterday, 4-1 the last 5. I do have a 4% play in the NFL, and NFL's probably been my hottest sport lately. Swept the board last Sunday, a perfect 3-0. I've got a 4% going there. I got a 3% in college football today, and I also have a 3% in the NHL, and that's where I made most of my money over the last decade.
Gotta love it, guys. And Teddy, you mentioned it. 5% are coming up this week here, this weekend. In fact, a couple of NFL games tomorrow. Week 16 slate on Sunday as well. What do you got locked and loaded for everyone?
Yeah, and let's not forget there's also a dozen NBA games tomorrow and a loaded college hoop slate as well. So it is a true 4 sports time of the year. And as you mentioned, a 5% big ticket for myself and my clients available right now on my page, wt.buzz/TC. We did hit 70% in college football last December, expecting similar success this December. I've not gotten involved at all in these early bowl games. So I get started tonight with the Notre Dame Penn State game, and we'll be rolling all weekend long. Again, just visit the page, wt.buzz/TC. And these great offers that Ross and Bryan were just talking about, they're available on my page as well, whether it's bowl season, whether it's December to remember, whether it's buy December and get January, or buy January and get the rest of December free. any of the cappers at WagerTalk.com, not just me, Ross, or Bryan. We all have those specials available. Check them out right now at WagerTalk.com, and good luck this weekend.
Guys, hit that like button if you haven't done so. We certainly appreciate the support. We're not done yet here today. College basketball coming up in just a few minutes. We'll hit the live stream again. R1L, Steve Merrill, Bryan Leonard will be here to talk about a couple of these big games coming up, so get ready for that. Also, not to be outdone here, just a couple more out the door. Rusty Kuntz says, boy, man, I hope Ryan Day forgets to put his rosy red blush on tomorrow. Outstanding stuff there, as well as one other one there. He said, let me see. Oh, yes, Day is so soft he should be the head spokesman of Charmin. We'll leave on that. Guys, best of luck with all your plays. We'll see you again next week as we get a little bit closer to a national champion. Good luck, guys. Cash those tickets. We'll see you again soon.